one of my favorite little nutshells, and well, there's two of them. One of them says respect and agreement are not necessarily the same thing, and the other is I respect your opinion. I trust my judgment. So if you have an opinion, I can take it in, and what I'm saying when I say I respect it is I respect that that's what you think, and that's what you believe, and I'm taking that in, and in this case, I don't believe the same thing. I don't accept that. Hell, the world would be in a better place, socially, personally, politically, if we had more of that kind of respect where people could have differences of opinions and not have to be, vilified for that.
It starts right here, deep in your heart. Start right here. Oh, that's where it starts. Look to your heart, it's always and only starting right here.
Thom Rutledge and Dr. Alan Berger bring over 90 years of clinical experience to this important podcast, and they offer you a guarantee. You will gain something of personal value from each episode. And now, what matters most.
It starts right here.
Welcome one more time. Start right here. Right here. I'm pointing to my head. Start right here. I've just realized we're talking about present tense, but today I want to be sure when we're talking about acceptance, we're also talking about starting right here. That's in right. My head. And with me is Dr. Alan Berger.
Well, you've already started the discussion of the topic. I love that. When you're pointing to yourself, well, that is acceptance, right? That is the nuts and bolts, or you would say it, Tom's nutshell wisdom. That's acceptance.
In a nutshell, it's more about. I've been thinking. I think I started our podcast earlier today in my head. So I've been taking walks out in the woods with my dog and thinking about this. And I think one of the places of acceptance is about understanding how we individually process things, and rather than immediately go to, as I spent much of my earlier life doing, criticizing and even condemning how I do it, trying to change everything about how I do it, actually respectfully learning how I actually process and learning to accept it and understand the value. It doesn't mean I can't change something, but it's like acceptance is so much a part of it.
It's so right on, Tom. And look, you and I are both in recovery, and, in the rooms, acceptance is talked about all the time. There's that often quoted page 417, right? The infamous page 417. And I don't have the quote in front of me. Patrick, do you happen to have a big book handy? Do you have that quote, or I can Google it. It'll turn up on Google.
No, I'm impressed that Patrick had the big book with arm's
reach. He got that in a second.
He did not have to even get out of his chair.
No, see if it's in your book at 417, because I think in the later editions it's not present. I think that was Dr. Paul Oliver's story out. Is where that.
I just love that Patrick just reached. He didn't even have to look. He just reached back there to get it.
Okay, 417. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life, unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment. Absolutely nothing happens.
Oh, just hold it. Just hit the paragraph. Just no. I want you to read the rest, but I just read it again up to the period. I just want people to register that part, and then we're going to talk about the second part of that.
Okay, sure thing. And acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I am disturbed, it is because I find some person, place, thing, or situation, some fact of my life, unacceptable to me, and I can find no serenity until I accept that person, place, thing, or situation as being exactly the way it is supposed to be at this moment.
So that part, we're going to stay with that. But now, well, why don't we talk about that part first and then let him read the second half, Thom? Is that okay? Let's just talk about the wisdom in that, right? Because I think there's a lot of wisdom in there, in that passage that was written in the book. What does it say to you, Thom? What is it? What are the thoughts that come to your mind when you hear it?
Well, I mean, the parts that jump out at me, of course, are just in the most just personal way. Just what I identify with is just how ludicrous the assignment would have been and had been in my life to accept the person and what you cannot change completely. It's like it would be like. I would feel like, no, there's a negotiation in here somewhere, but you're telling me I just accept it completely. Which I think I could remember the overwhelm of that. And I don't remember when the first time I ever read that or heard that, but I do, I've heard it many times, and it's like, but I do have a memory of the overwhelmingness of that, of like, that seems impossible. Yeah. And it's so necessary.
It does take some work, because acceptance isn't a passive thing. It is something you do, right? And you started to talk about that last time. Yeah. And I thought that your point about that was so well taken, because a lot of people just see it as, oh, all right, I got to accept it. Like that's a passive thing that you just do that some way. But it takes a very active process to get to that point of acceptance. And I think maybe that would be good for us to talk about. I mean, I know for me, as we got on the show today, I was telling you, my wife and I, had at it last night. She's flying back to North Carolina. Her dad's going to have a surgery. She's very anxious about this and how it's going to go for him. And so she left early this morning, and we were just sitting around, and my older kids are over to help out while she's gone today. And she, somebody turned to her and said something like, when are you coming back? And I jumped in and I said, well, Thursday, really praying and please, Thursday, it's got to be Thursday. And she says, well, we'll have to see how it goes. And my anxiety kind of goes through the roof. Right. And I go, what do you mean? I mean, what do you mean see how it goes? Is that we play? And then she just, in that she heard, well, I'm not going to support her. And she got really upset with me. And for my part of it is just accepting that what she's asking for is really this unconditional acceptance and regard from me at this point in time. And I don't have it. I mean, I don't. I'd love to be able to say that I don't have any feelings about this thing, but I do. It's and she goes, well, I don't understand why it's a hardship for you. So listeners don't realize that I've got a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old, and I've got a 34-year-old and a 36-year-old. And yes, we have a nanny that comes in during the day that helps out, but the nanny does go home at some point, and then it's daddy daycare. Is what we call it. And that means that I'm on with them, and which I love. I love my children. I, do whatever I can for them. But it is much harder to be there for them at 68 at the end of the day than it was when I was 30 years old, when I had my other kids. Right. Well, that's a tough one, because for Jess, she says, I don't understand why it's stressful for you. How can that be stressful? I've got everything taken care of. I go, you have. During the day, you were wonderful. You've got things laid out. I just got to go to the calendar. I've got the forms in place. One of the things that I was complaining about was taking my 2 children for flu shots on Monday morning. So last year, when I took Maddie for a flu shot, she did not want that needle in her arm. Yeah. And I was holding her, and her hand got free. Literally, she tore up my arm with her nails. She was so panicked and scared. So now I'm taking 2 of them in, because only one person can go in the doctor's office on Monday morning at 8:30. And I said, I've got some concern about that. Well, why do you have concern? I mean, because I do. I see myself wrestling Maddie to the ground. And then I started to get creative with that. So I kind of solved that one. I said, is there any alternative other than her getting a shot? Well, they can do the nasal spray. Let's call, please. Let's call and get the nasal spray. So I only have to deal with Cece getting a shot. It's going to be a little easier to manage Cece getting a shot than managing Cece. So that part,
because basically this is parenting 101, right? It's like, because Cece won't see it coming.
Cece won't see it coming. Maddie knows what it's about, so she's got the anticipatory anxiety. She's freaked out. But I'm kvetching here a little bit. I'm just saying that's the kind of stuff that I can handle that, but it is stressful for me. I hate to see the kids crying. I hate to have to hold them down and to use power over them in that way. That didn't feel good last year with Maddie, even though I know it was for a greater good. But I'm also sitting there thinking, well, what kind of trauma is this creating for this poor thing?
Right.
So that's the stuff that goes on for me. But anyway, I'm getting lost in this whole thing. I want a therapy session today, Thom.
Well, I got to be honest with you too, that I'm feeling the need to represent Jess a little bit here.
Good, please.
In a couple of things. I mean, one of the first things you that I believe is an assumption that you made on the front end, which was what she wants from me is unconditional this. It's like going like, I bet she didn't say that. And I bet if I asked her, are you asking for it to be this one way unconditional thing for Alan? I would bet you she would say no. So I don't know what the rest of that is, but that's an assumption made early on that can, and we both know this. We see this coming. You listen from the outside, you see that assumption by itself is going to get trouble. Going to create more and more trouble about that stuff. And it's like, so I think that there was something else that came up, but that was the first one I wanted to say is like, be careful that you're not buying into your assumptions about what Jess is asking. It's different from saying this is what it feels like.
Well, okay. So let's take that a little further because this is good.
Okay.
So this is what I draw that conclusion based on. She's really not interested in how I feel about this. She wants me to take care of it. Seriously. I mean,
no, but again, if I asked her, hey, Jess, is that true that you really aren't concerned about how Alan feels about that? Would she say
yes? She might say yes. I'm so concerned about my dad right now that I think he should put all of his feelings aside and just be concerned about me. I think that it's selfish for him to be thinking about himself in any way when I'm worried about my dad and worried about what's going on. She would say that. So I think that that's pretty accurate at this point.
Okay. Well, let's leave it to where she might say that. Yes, and you know her better than I do. And I'm not saying she wouldn't, but I'm saying leave open the possibility that there may be assumption getting in the way.
No, listen. I might be wrong on that, but let's go with this for a minute.
But it's not right. It's not just right or wrong.
No. But if that is it, let's say it is. Okay. That's how she's thinking. Because look, that would come up in relationships. Look, my needs are more important than your needs at this point in time, and I know that those kinds of discussions come up in relationships, and I understand that. Look, if it was talking about that she's going back to her dad's on the deathbed. Whole different experience for me at this point in time, right? Now I rally around that flag and I'm going to do everything I can do, to support her in that, right? I would do that. I can see that in mind. I don't see, this is where I think the difference is coming in between us.
Yeah.
She's much more threatened by what's going on with her dad than I assess the situation.
Of course. Yeah.
That's her dad.
Yeah.
She loves him. She's concerned about him. I get it. We have a different kind of attachment to him, right? And connection to him. So there is that difference. And that difference is probably one of the things I'm up against, right? I'm saying to her, look, I want you to think about this the way I'm thinking about it. And she's saying, I want you to think about it the way I'm thinking about it.
So if we're keeping the acceptance in as our theme, one of the things to accept is that we can accept pretty much without argument, I think, that each of you has a different perspective, and the goal is not to have the same perspective.
Right.
It's like, and there are some knowns here, which is she has a different and more intense investment in this. This is her father, and I, when I think come from my family, I also think it turns out she likes her father, right? It's like in my family, sometimes people would be on their deathbed. You go like, well, do you like them? You go like, man, not so much. So I did like my father, but
she loves him. She's very concerned.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And now you realize also, if we were doing it, you may not speak to me after this podcast, but it's like
maybe the last podcast. Patrick, get ready. This may be our final show.
It's gonna be next week. It'll be Alan and Patrick.
Hey, Patrick, what happened to Thom? I don't know.
We'll just leave that screen blank over there.
just a blank screen. I like it. It's like
we can put Thom was here.
Like Kilroy. That's exactly. We'll do. No, when I'm thinking, if this is
my humility, I can feel it coming.
If this was an individual session, what I would be focusing with you on is saying, well, let's look at your side of this, right. And you're bringing up a lot of hers,
yes,
and I get that part. So it's like, and I think all that's worth exploring. What makes me uncomfortable is
what I know about my side is this.
Okay,
I demand that she consider my feelings in this, as well as she considers hers. Okay. That's what I'm demanding of her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's and I know where that comes from. When I was growing up, when my dad died, my mom was so much in her pain, there was no room for me to talk about my pain, to express what was going on. I felt incredibly abandoned, invisible, dismissed, all of those feelings. And there's a part of me when Jess takes that attitude of, look, my feelings are important here. I go back to little Alan at 11 years old, standing at the window when my dad, died, and have no one to talk to about it. And so I know that that's activating that for me with this whole thing.
Okay, so when you do that, you got to have your finger ready on the pause button, knowing that. Because that's a very direct connection. I mean, when it has to do with death, and not only death of a parent, but death of a father, it's like, and I know from just other conversations you've had, how, and just knowing when you lose your father at 11 years old, I mean, that's a hell of a loss anyway. But the idea of not having, it's interesting. My father had this in common with you. He said the day his mother died that he doesn't remember anybody even speaking to him. It sounds like he may have had some similar experiences that you had. It's like,
I could say those same words at your dad.
Yeah. He said nobody even checked with him. How he was doing. It's like, so that's a heavy duty thing to get tapped into. So it's like, so one of the things that what I believe as far as accepting our side of that, and now I want to double check with you. When you're using purposely the word demand, you're plugging into what you teach people about, that the problem we have when we're in distress is that we are demanding something that we probably should be preferring, to use the Ken Kai's thing, right? It's like the good news is, even though it feels like you have to have it, you don't. At least in your head, up in your head, you can know, I don't. You're going to be okay, even though you're not going to get exactly what you want. It's but I also want you to get.
That comes from that differentiation between that little 11-year-old boy really needed that, right? I really needed that. It would have helped me process that. Look, I'm 68 now. I don't need her to do that for me today. I prefer
but little Alan is not. Little Alan is still 11.
I didn't get in touch with that until hours after this thing blew up with us. At about 3 a.m. last night is when it came to me. Aha, this is what this was about.
Yeah,
this is what it touched in me, and I did. I sent her a text and shared that with her. Now, an interesting thing is this. is she shares a very similar experience in terms of that, which Jess and I, when we met, and I think one of the reasons that we got so attracted to each other is because of our trauma bond, because she had the same experience growing up. She wasn't listened to. Right. She was neglected in her family, and she didn't feel like anybody was concerned about her feelings. So here we are, her little girl's getting activated, my little boy, and now we're having at it. I mean, and it's that this came up for me a while ago in my therapy. It's like there's limited resources that if I don't get my hands on it,
or she desperation.
Yeah. Yes, there's that desperation in it.
Yeah, and the other piece you just added was competitiveness. It's like I throw the ball out in the middle of the middle of the room and say somebody get it, and you guys are fighting over it. It's like who's going to get it?
And she reminds me that my PhD is in psychology and her PhD is in the real science.
Yeah. Well, well, if she didn't, I was going to remind you. Now, don't forget, she's really smart in the real science.
But that's what I was trying to start to unpack this last night. I realized my side of this is that the same thing that I feel that it's a projection. I think she's demanding that I do this. Well, I'm demanding that she does that.
Yeah. And the truth is, the bottom line is, you guys, there's absolutely room for both of you to have needs met here.
Yeah.
It's like, I mean, one of the things that I got based on what you were saying before we actually started recording. So I'm cheating a little bit and doing the therapy here, but it's like, and I mentioned it to you. You had one of those loss of control experiences when a nerve gets hit directly. It's like, and so most of the time, and tell me if I'm giving you too much credit, but I don't think I am. As old married guys, most of the time we're pretty good at the give it a few beats before I say anything, So we have a chance to kind of take inventory inside ourselves and do this stuff. Sometimes we miss that. And in that particular case, the way you told it before and the way you told it again after we started recording, it's like, no, that little kid in you got hit directly. And it's like, and there was an immediate objection to that. And that's where I think where those assumptions come out. I think that's when the all or none thinking comes out, and it's when it gets really scary. And so, so part of the process is what we're doing right now, which is to say, okay, well, slow it down. We're going to unpack this. We're going to take it apart. We're going to take a look at it, and we're going to find a way for there to be win-win solutions here. And the other part I always want couples to know, I know you do the same thing, is the coolest thing about having a partner that because you have already walked through some really difficult things with, is not only are we going to make it through this, but we're going to be stronger for the experience. We're going to be stronger, probably closer, but it's like, but it doesn't. And I want I want to remind you, because you do know this, but I want to remind you because you're in it, and say it to the people who are listening. That doesn't mean that when you're in the midst of one of these struggles in your relationship, that it doesn't just totally suck.
Yeah, it does totally suck.
Because it does. It's just and waiting it out and just sitting there. Talk about being in the moment. God, that's hard to do when you're feeling this stuff.
Well, and my style is to more talk about it and let's try to sit down. And hers is, nope, I don't want to talk about it.
Well, that's right. Dee Dee's the same way. She's, I want to have a ping pong match conversation, back and forth, and we had a wonderful therapist that would she kind of literally get in my face, but she'd roll her chair closer to me because she would know when she needed to do that. And she would just say stuff like, well, Thom, we're not going to talk about that right now. It's like, not as patronizing as that sounded. She wasn't, but it was like, it's like, you don't get to decide when everything gets talked about, Thom. It's, and this is going to go slow. And what I learned was it's going to go slower than I wanted to, because the reason we wanted to go fast is because we just hate the pain and the discomfort.
Yes. Right. Oh God.
Talk about accepting the challenge. Yeah. You want, the idea
That's when you just hit something is accepting that I could sit with the discomfort.
And in the moment, it's like, yeah, there's a part of me that just, that's where I actually I can feel my feelings that, I mean, kind of, I don't know, it's on your behalf or for you or whatever. But when I say that, I go like, if the role, I just know that if the roles were reversed, it's like my inner response to, yeah, you can sit there with it. You could just be with the discomfort is like, fuck,
That's right. No, you're
like,
right.
It's true, but it's just, I don't like it.
It just keeps, I've been having this thing in the therapy. I've started to talk to someone, a couple months ago, just to get some more support and to deal with, COVID and all the other stuff that's going on. And, one of the things that keeps coming back is just the grief and the loss with my dad and how significant that was in so many layers of my experience. And, sometimes I don't want to call her today because I'm going to fucking cry today. And I don't want to cry today. It's that kind of thing that comes up. So I totally resonate with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I know that feeling 100%.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense about your dad too, because we actually, in conversations that we've had on, you've talked about a little bit in the Thursday group and stuff like that. It's just one of those things that's front and center for you right now. You're revisiting that it's amazing. It's like, I don't know that we ever become completely healed. We always want people to know when you drop back to old themes like that, it's like, it just means it's time to do some more work there. Yeah. And
and I'm going kicking and screaming, but I can go kicking and screaming. Just go.
Well, I'll say this on behalf of both you and Jess is just be sure you got your pause button nearby so that you can slow it down a little bit when you realize that you may be stepping into some stuff that even if, because she's in such a stressful situation that she's not going to be as good at processing this stuff either. Right. In the on the ground in the moment kind of thing. Both of you are in a place where it's kind of like sometimes it's just better to time out.
Yeah.
Just everybody take a breath. We love each other.
Well, and that's sometimes where because even this discussion now is just helping me accept the difference between us a lot. Is that there is a difference right now in terms of what's going on, and it's getting clearer as we're talking.
And the other piece you've talked about too is remembering also the and so much of this work, so much of recovery. I don't mean just from addiction, but recovery as a human experience is about remembering, because it's like we're not learning new shit. We're forgetting machines, human beings. We're just forgetting stuff, and I call it post-it note therapy. It's like, the reason we're in each other's lives is because we keep reminding each other of the things we need to be reminded of. I can say this, I can be a reminder to you today, and within a short amount of time, you may say the exact same words back to me because I need to hear them. And it's like, and rather than think, oh, I'm so stupid, I'm forgetting, it's like, no, we don't need to have better memories. We just need a support system in our lives that keeps reminding us of the most important stuff. And there is nothing more important than coming back to the place where as the older I've gotten, the more I will end a session with couples sometimes just going like, look, just take a look at each other and remember that you love each other.
Yeah,
because that's the most important thing.
But another thing I just got in touch with is there's a part of me that I just realized when we were talking is when I said I demand that you pay attention to my feelings, even more than that. It's like, I get pissed at you if you don't. Jess, it's like, I'm furious with you. How dare you treat me like I was treated before?
Right.
And then on that I put on, and you said you loved me. You see, it hooks up to that rule. Then, right?
That goes? You're breaking. No, it says right here in the invisible manual that you can't say that.
Contract that you never signed that I imagined you did.
Exactly. Well, we all have those invisible manuals that basically have those rules in there, and it's like, the word. I mean, I don't know if everybody responds to it. I'd be interested in what other people think, but. And Patrick, tell me what you think about this. The word demand, and maybe it's the word or maybe the way you said it earlier, but it feels angry to me.
Yeah, it is. I'm angry. I demand that.
Did that feel that way to you, Patrick?
That was the pain that I had. It turned into a demand now.
I think I'm looking for backup with Patrick though. It's like, did that feel like, did you feel that too, Patrick? I don't think Patrick's there.
I think Patrick went to sleep.
Oh, you know what he did? He set up a cardboard cutout of himself in that. He is so smart.
We think he's there the whole time because we never asked him to say anything. Oh my goodness! Now
the old cardboard cutout.
What he did is, I'm not getting into this with these guys.
Yeah, he's
like, good luck with this stuff.
Yeah,
I'm going to pretend at my internet.
Yeah, if he's really smart, he's just he's going like, I'm bailing Rutledge out. No way.
I'm not getting into the middle of this stuff.
I'm the producer for both these guys. I ain't taking sides. Oh man!
But I'm taking sides with you because that's right, and there is that thing. When I started to say, I feel she demands that of me, but it's a lot of my demand on her.
Well, and
I am making assumptions about where now I can see what you meant.
Yeah. Well, the other thing too is the best way to help somebody else, I think, get to the place where they can acknowledge if they have that too, is again, it's that thing. The thing I think it's available in any learning process, personal growth learning process, but I've gotten it mostly from 12-step recovery, is taking care of your side of the street first. It's like, and one of the things I've known people in and around the program sometimes that I think take that so far that it's like, that basically it ends up reinforcing I'm to blame for everything. And so it's just take care of your whatever's going on, it's your fault. It's like, no, but the idea is even if the other person, even if I was exactly right about the other person and my assessment of what they're doing, which I'm probably not, but even if I were, I still need to start here. Oh, start right here. It's our podcast name. It's like, start right here. That's that's what you're helping me see. I get lost in what she's doing. And helping me come back to is start with yourself, Alan. Figure out what you're doing in this situation and what's generating your reactions. Right. And see, and the idea when you can own something that you demand. Now, and you tell me if this fits for you, but this is true. This would be a definite truth for me, is the way I could fool myself into thinking I'm doing it when I'm not, is I could own what I'm demanding and then secretly be going, so now is there something you want to share, about what you're demanding? And it's like, and go like, no, Thom, that's not it. It's like, own it, put it out there and let it go.
Yep.
And it's like, it's hard work. And what you said earlier, it's like when we're dealing with acceptance, acceptance gets easier, but it never gets easy, I don't think. Or at least it hasn't. I'm 66, getting ready to be 67. So that's so far it hasn't. It's but with practice it does get easier.
Yeah. So Patrick just sent me a message that he had a power outage. And that's
sure.
So that's right. That's likely excuse, Patrick. We're gonna Southern California Edison's power outage grid in. So he said, keep going.
All right, we'll do.
Power outage is keep.
We will forever refer to this podcast as the power outage with the little quotation marks around it.
No, but this is good, Thom. You've helped me get centered again, and I owe her an amends. I can see that. Well, and but also I want to come back though. I want to say there's not a thing wrong with what you want. Yeah. Oh no, listen, I can and look at it. If it was a preference, if I could have just had it. This is where the pause has to come in, and I have to deal with little Alan. It's not her job to deal with. Right. You got to go have a talk with him. Say, my thing to say to that little kid, it was the most powerful. I mean, inner child work is the most powerful stuff that I have ever done. And it was, and it's amazing because after Stuart Smalley came out with, Al Franken's character came out, people started to roll their eyes every time we come up with it. And I kind of abandoned it for a little while because I didn't want to deal with that. But then I realized, you know what? To me,
I don't even call it just inner child work. I call it inner parent, inner child work, because the problem is not finding the inner child. It's developing the inner parent to take care of the inner child, because otherwise we're walking around as those inner children. That's why we feel, that's why we have that imposter syndrome. That's why we feel like we're 12 years old when everybody else is an adult. And it's like, and for me, and I remember when Bedford Combs was doing the workshop that I was in, where for the first time he had me put my inner child in my chest and say, he gave me this sentence to say, and the sentence was, "I am the parent you've always been waiting for." And as you can imagine, those words would not come out of my mouth. I mean, it's like I sat there, I have no idea time distortion, but I'm probably at least 20, 25 minutes before I was able to say anything. Then I think I probably said the first part of that sentence, and then cried for another 40 minutes. It's like, but it was because it was so powerful, and it was so overwhelming that I was the one who was going to be in charge. But this is, to me, the inner parent. Being the inner parent who takes care of the inner child is my definition of adult. It's one of those things that actually shows up in my first book, In Simple Truth, that I finally figured out the other day. By the way, Alan, I think I wrote that book. And I don't mean I wrote that in 1989. I think I might have written it now. And I might have been the voice talking back to that guy, because I don't think there's a lot of stuff there I don't think I understood then, but I do now. I wonder if it's possible to dictate backwards in time. That may seem weird, but it's
somehow found a time warp somewhere.
It's like something in there, but that idea of that definition of being an adult helped me throughout this thing of being able to say, I am the one I am the one in charge. I am the one who takes care of me. And so in times like what you're talking about, what you do is go like, oh, my little guy's talking to me, and he needs me to come back and check with him, not try to get Jess to take care of him.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. Because she's struggling taking care of herself.
She's busy. Yeah. She's really busy. Yeah. And bless you both of your hearts, because in the meantime, you've got those two other precious little ones. It's like, when I'm telling a story like that, I'm just talking about my little guy in the inside of my chest. It's like, you've got ambulatory ones out there,
right?
in physical space.
That's right. And juggling that at the same time,
trying to stab them with shots and stuff.
She really does a good job of. I mean, even when she goes, she's really on top of it. Mm-hmm. I really see that.
You guys are good parents. I've seen enough of your parenting to know you're both very good parents.
No, this is both helpful, man. Thank you.
Well, this was you're welcome.
Now, listen, I hope that as you guys are listening to this podcast, you see the process involved. It's like, as Thom encouraged me, as a good friend would, to say, hey, forget about what Jess is doing. Look at yourself. That's where you're going to hit gold. I mean, that's where the change and the possibilities exist, not in me trying to figure out her, to understand her better. I mean, I'm not saying that's not helpful at times, but in this case, it's much more helpful to understand me.
Well, and the other piece I would say this just because I'd want you to hear this, but also for people listening and maybe making some sense out of this, out there there's also something to be said for saying the story the way you said it initially, just because what you're also doing is you're letting me know, when you were talking at first, you're letting me and Patrick know, what your experience was.
Yeah.
I mean, you're telling the story as you experienced it. It's that information, certainly as a friend, and even if we're doing therapy, it's that the information of how people experience stuff is what helps us formulate where the needs are and where we might be able to that point of intervention that you and I call our workshop, that find that place. And it's like, and and this is actually, it's a very good example when somebody who is open to that and who understands that stuff and just needs that direction. Because it's, it's the glasses on your head, you can't see them on your, you lose your glasses. Where are they? They're on your,
that wasn't,
everybody else can see them, but we can't see, nobody can do this for themselves. We all need help.
Yeah.
We need that outside perspective.
That's so true. And, and that's the big thing I had to struggle with in the beginning. And I think less today, although there may still be some residual of that, is this idea that getting help was taking something away from my sense of self instead of adding to it. It's like that was humiliation, not humility, for me at some point. It's a lot less of that.
I tell you what, Alan,
I just had a faint little voice that said, "Oh my God, what's everybody going to think about you out there?" And I want them, what are you going to think about me? Hopefully you think about this is a guy that's living his life and trying to get honest with himself and try to figure things out.
No, no, I can tell you, they're going to appreciate they're going to appreciate your honesty and your vulnerability. And if they don't, fuck them if they can't take a joke. It's like, it's like, so too bad, but it's like, no, one of the things that has helped me a lot is, I'm going to say this with some humor, but there's absolute honesty in this and there's truth to this. It's being somebody who fucks up a lot. It turns out that the idea of that really, I love that. If you ask me what's your favorite step in the 12 steps, it's 10, 10. Because when you're wrong, you promptly admit it. It's like the idea that my response time can be so much better than it ever was before, where I can actually acknowledge when I have a misstep or a screw up or I've hurt somebody's feelings or done something I need to change, and that I can step in there and own it. That is a source of self-esteem for me. So the idea is the irony of that is I can come away from a time where I fuck something up with better self-esteem than I had going in, because I'm honoring the fact that I do have that humility. And it's like having, and I used to think, oh, humility, I'm one of those guys that thinks, oh, I had too much humility, which meant humiliation. But of course, what I realized later, I think we've talked about that. I call that negative arrogance now. It's just, it's dangerous.
Yeah, so it's really dangerous. Mm-hmm. The second half of that quote in the big book, and Patrick's not here to read it to us, but this is the part that I've had so many people run into trouble with, Thom, and maybe you have too. Mm-hmm. It goes something like, so I love that part, right? Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. When I'm disturbed is because I find some person, place, thing, situation, some fact of my life unacceptable to me.
Right.
And I can find no serenity at all until I accept that person, place, or thing, or situation as being exactly as the way it's supposed to be at this moment. Mm-hmm. Now, here's the other part. Absolutely nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Until I could accept my alcoholism, I could not stay sober. I found that to be true. Unless I accept life completely on life's terms, I cannot be happy. I think that's true too. Mm-hmm. But the issue is nothing happens in God's world by mistake. And here's where I've had people run into it. So I had a client that had a 10-year-old child. And that child was having back problems, and this person was in recovery. Child was having back problems, went to the doctor. They realized that there was a tumor on the child's kidney. Mm. So they had to go in. It was cancer. They had to take out the tumor. They did chemotherapy, some radiation therapy. Looked like the child was clear from cancer. Mm-hmm. 10 months went by, no recurrence. And then one day, his child woke up again and complaining of a back problem. Mm-hmm. And they go back to the doctor, and it was his worst nightmare. The tumor is now growing on the other kidney, and now there's nothing they can do. And the child has 6 months to live. Mm-hmm. So this fellow goes to meetings, and they start to use this acceptance and say nothing happens in God's world by mistake. Mm-hmm. And he looked at them and said, so in your God's world, that it's okay to kill a child with a tumor on their kidney? Mm-hmm. I don't want to be a part of that world. What kind of world is that? Right. And see, that's the part that I've seen so many people run up against.
Mm-hmm.
The way I've resolved it is everything, if you just take that out, you don't have to that piece is not the cotter pin, if you will, that holds the rest of it together, right?
Right.
You can, to me, you can partial that out of that whole paragraph, and it stands. You don't have to invoke this idea that there's some great plan out there and somebody's up there deciding who's going to live and who's not going to live and all that other stuff.
Right.
So what is your reaction to that part?
Well, I mean, I when I hear that, I already take that part out because that's not a belief system that I have. Is and my belief system instead is not, no, that's not how the universe works or how God works, but this is how it works. My belief system is I don't know how this damn thing works. It's like my spiritual belief is I have very little, I don't know much about how that works. Now, what this is that personalities getting in the way of principles. It's like the principles of the program tell us take what's helpful, leave what's not, which gives us permission to edit all of it. It's like and I can tell you examples of me and other people who will make a mess of things when we're trying to edit stuff too. But it's like, it's in that particular case, what my position on that is, if somebody wants to push that point that this is the truth, then you're really pushing a particular image of God, and it is God as we understand God. It's the universe as we understand the universe. So the idea, and it's basically using in my opinion, a limited view that God is made in our image, that he's he or she is some person making decisions about our lives like that. And if that were the case, if somebody were to present me with what I would say to the guy that you're talking about, if somebody were to present me with information, the hypothetical is, this is how the universe works, and somebody up there in the sky decided to kill your child, then I would go like, I'll go with you. I don't want any part of this either. It's like, but that I don't believe that. I believe that all of these are available tools for us to use and find out what helps us most. And in a situation like that, I would say you almost have to take that out. And unless you want to be delusional and think, and I mean, you can do that too, but it's like, no, I don't. Well,
you're generating a really good point too, because what happened with this person when people, with all the best intentions of the world coming to him after meetings and would share this stuff, it was turning him off to go to meetings.
Yeah.
It was really hard. And what was once a place of support and a resource for him was fast becoming a place that he didn't feel at all was a safe place for him to go. He ended up working through that and found some meetings where they didn't have that kind of philosophy and weren't bringing that in. But, it's a good point for all of us to think about. I'm not here to put my trip on somebody else, right? My understanding, my beliefs. And Bill even warns about that in the big book. Don't try to get someone to believe the God that you have. It's about a God of each of our understanding.
Right.
And that's why this program works, because there's room for all of us.
Well, and to go to the acceptance part of what we're talking about today is that's also where the act as if thing, the principle, can really help too, because even if for some reason I didn't feel able to take that part of no accidents out of there, what I could add into that is to say, okay, what I'm going to do is understand this is meant for me to act as if there are no accidents. And that only means, it comes back to the very same thing that acceptance is always about. I can't change what's already happened. Of all the things I cannot change what's already happened. And it's like, whatever I'm going to do, I have to process it from here forward. And that's just the truth, no matter what, because in spite of my theory on how I wrote my first book, I don't think time travel is really a viable possibility.
No. This is no. I hear you, man. I think that this is very important. Is that we can edit that out if that's if that doesn't fit for us, and we don't have to just swallow it whole.
Well, it's, we talk about my nutshells. One of my favorite little nutshells, and I always say most of my write has my own reminders, but one of them just says, well, there's two of them. One of them says respect and agreement are not necessarily the same thing. And the other is, I respect your opinion. I trust my judgment. And so that's the position of being in charge of your own life, and to be able to say, I want to say I respect, and does not mean I have to agree. So if you have an opinion, I can take it in. And what I'm saying when I say I respect it is, I respect that that's what you think, and that's what you believe. And I'm taking that in. And in this case, I don't believe the same thing. I don't accept that. Hell, the world would be in a better place, socially, personally, politically, if we had more of that kind of respect, where people could have differences of opinions and not have to be, vilified for that.
Yes. Yeah. So, I'm thinking that let's think about doing a part 2 next week on acceptance. Okay. And because I think it would be worthwhile to focus even more on what do we do when we're resisting that acceptance.
Yes, I love that. Yeah.
Right. I mean, how do we deal with that? And, I can share, what this man taught me about it when he was dealing with the death of his 10-year-old. Something about, facing a crisis of that magnitude that really can reveal a lot about our human nature.
I tell you what, I have worked on several occasions now through the years with parents who've lost children. And it's like, I mean, first of all, I am convinced of that. I don't think there is a greater loss, and I don't think there is anything that can impact somebody stronger. But I've also watched people. I mean, I've never seen any two people, including people who are married. I've never seen two people respond to it the same way. I mean, but it basically, it demands that you're going to change. And it's like, so I don't want to make that the whole subject about that, but the resistance to acceptance, I like that a lot. Let's do it.
That'll be next week. Okay. And
Patrick, look, Patrick.
We're suspicious of this power outage, by the way. We are making up a story that says that we were at a very tense moment in the therapy, and you just didn't want to be a part of it. And you said, let these guys go. I'm going to check out of here, and then I'll come back Wednesday.
And you had
I just had to get out of the kitchen, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I thought you had a cardboard cutout of yourself there for a little while. It's like, which I thought was very clever. You're gonna have to move.
We were in Mission Impossible mode here, and we thought that you had the whole team of Mission Impossible behind you.
That's right. So next week we're doing part 2 of acceptance. We're dealing with resistance to acceptance.
Resistance to acceptance. Okay, so this will be part 1 of 2, and then the following week will be with John, and that'll be exciting.
John Amadeo is our good friend, a brilliant author, a therapist, and he's going to be with us in 2 weeks. And he's going to be our very first guest.
That's right. Patrick, everything okay? The power outage didn't hurt anything?
Well, I should probably turn off my computer in case it's out for a really long time, and I don't have battery charging. But everything's good. I'll just look forward to watching the section of the podcast that I missed. And have you guys done your sign-offs yet?
No, we're gonna do it right now.
Yeah, and then stay on for like a minute just so I can talk with you.
Okay. Well, if anybody is interested in knowing more about me, my website is ThomRutledge.com, and all information about my books, the stuff that Alan and I are doing, a lot of free downloads there. So check me out, and you can email me from there if you have any questions or comments about our program. We love to hear from you.
So you can learn more about my work at abphd.com, and I have a lot of resources available as well as a bookstore. And if anybody would care to donate to pay Thom for the therapy session he gave me today, you can do so at
Venmo me. Beautiful. In other words, Alan's not paying.
I'm not
It's
paying.
like,
It's good, but it wasn't. No, it was very helpful. Thanks, Thom.
well, you're welcome.
All right, you guys. Talk to you later.
It's a spiral, not a circle. Goes round, round, round. Look for solutions, be your own friend. Never say never in either direction. Look in the mirror, trust the reflection.